All right, this is the Mysteria podcast. We're nice and comfy. We're cozy. I'm excited for this episode. We've had quite a few conversations leading up to this, and it's always been fun talking to you, and you're a very interesting person, and we're going to get into some good topics today. So my guest, the lovely Ms. Nadia Fox.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
It's nice to meet you in person.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you too.
So we're having like nice discussion off the air, and we'll just kind of hop into it. And I got my watch going. We got our coffees going, and I got a ginger beer too.
Nice.
It reminds me of England, so.
Okay.
So I don't know. I mean, I guess you've done a lot of things in your life so far. We're talking about dating life in Vancouver too. So we're talking about new things. We're talking about old things. So you want to start with old things, or you want to start with new things?
Doesn't matter.
What do you think? Well, why don't we, let's start with new.
Okay.
We'll do it like a Tarantino movie. We'll start new, we'll go back, we'll jump forward, we'll go all over the place.
Yeah.
So you were talking, I was bitching about dating in Vancouver because some of the experiences I've been having lately are not necessarily negative, but not positive either, I'd say. And what's interesting is, and you made the excellent point of saying, when you're multi-dimensional, people have a hard time with that. And that seems to be the case, because when I show up and say, oh yeah, I got this law degree and blah, 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 and are you doing work with that? Well, no, not really. I'm kind of, sort of doing some stuff, but not really. I did this record and I have this podcast and I'm trying to get rolling with that. And then that's kind of when I get the confused look. And you would think that, I like to think the stuff I'm doing is pretty positive. It seems positive to me. But the reaction that you get from people can be quite interesting at times, where it's like, and like we said, if it's a multi-dimensional thing or unidimensional, people get kind of weirded out by that. And so for someone, we'll get into the work that you do, which is very interesting, and I think there's lots of what's the right word? Stereotypes, I guess, based around that you definitely do not subscribe to, because that's just not who you are. But people will make their assumptions, right? So. Yeah, I don't know. Where do you want to start with there? Multi-dimensional, unidimensional? Where are we going?
So I think people really prefer safety. And so, when they hear lawyer or something, of course they're going to assume like they know.
Hoity-toity.
I suppose, and just like a very traditional lifestyle. But unfortunately, or fortunately, traditions are also breaking down right now. And then also I find people probably think like, what kind of crazy nutcase is just throwing away their law degree to do whatever this is. And I get the same reaction in a different way when I tell people like, people will meet me in the strip club and they'll be like, oh, what's your exit strategy? And first of all, like, that is so goddamn rude.
I was just going to say, I'm like, man, that's condescending.
Sorry, there's like a fly. You don't say that to a waitress or a bartender, or like, it's like, calm down. And then also people, like when I tell them like, oh, I've gone to school 5 times now, or oh, I just dropped out of school or something, people kind of look at you like, oh, wow, you have no idea what you're doing. But what they don't understand on our side is, no, I did this because I know exactly what I'm doing. I obviously can weigh pros and cons myself, and I've decided that this path is better. But people kind of like think that we don't know how to weigh pros and cons, I suppose.
Well, and in your instance too, it's not like you stopped going to school because you got kicked out.
Right.
You made a choice.
Yeah. Yeah, and I had great grades. So.
Yeah, it's interesting, like like talking about stereotypes. I'm pretty outspoken too about talking about what assholes lawyers are, because I went to school with them, so I know who they are. I'm not one of them, by the way.
Lawyers,
I'm not in there. Lawyers. Yeah. And it's funny, and you get a reaction like, oh, if you did something traditional like, law, then people will say, oh, you must be like a good person then, right? Because that's like a standard that everybody shoots for, as if there's something magical about that standard anyway, which there really isn't. But then in your case, with dancing and your Onlyfans career that you restarted, then it's, oh, what? Why do that? Why don't you do something else? That's kind of the reaction is, and even when I was telling people that I was going to have you on the podcast, even I was kind of getting a little bit of comments from people where it's like, oh, why? Like, why would you do that? And I'm like, well, pick up the phone and talk to her for 10 minutes, and then you can tell me. She's a good person, right? So it's interesting the label on what you do. Somehow it then means that's who you are as a person, when that's not at all the case. And it goes good or bad. It goes on both sides of that. But what's your experience been with that?
Well, I say it's not, what you do at work, it's what you do when you're off work that kind of makes you who you are, right? My experience, do you mean like with being judged for what I do?
Sure, yeah.
It's definitely transformed over the years. Like in 2012 when I became an exotic dancer, I'm from the Bible Belt of BC, so Chilliwack and Abbotsford, there's a lot of Christians and stuff, and I would just log on to Facebook and,
the dreaded Facebook,
and,
oh yes.
Literally I'd go to message, one friend and, oh, I'm blocked. And then I'd be like, oh, I'm going to go check on this person and see if we're still doing that thing this weekend. Oh, I'm blocked. And it was just like block, 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 block. Every single person who found out I was a dancer. And I did bodybuilding competitions. I was bikini.
Oh, you did those, eh?
Yeah, I did that years ago. And I just walked into the gym one day and the whole gym fell silent. And I was like, oh, they know. Because it was my first 3 months of dancing where people didn't really know. And then all of a sudden people knew. And I walked in and it was like the whole gym stopped and was like silent. And then I never went back to that gym. And I was right, everybody did know, and I was kind of like the town stripper. And then it started to transform. Like I moved out to Vancouver within my first 6 months of dancing, and that's strippers and stuff started to be featured in music videos a lot more at that time. And then there started to be like more reality TV show and stuff, and then since Cardi B and all these things, like it's kind of changed, and Amber Rose, and I mean these are not great representations of the industry.
Thank you for saying that.
But I will say, being an exotic dancer or being a sex worker is actually very different region to region because there's different laws and stuff. And in British Columbia, it's actually quite conservative. If you're a dancer, you actually dance.
Right.
Whereas in some parts of the world, being a dancer could mean something completely different. Which is scary because then when I tell people I'm a dancer, depending on where they're from, that's what they're going to think. Yeah. So if you're a guy from Florida and I tell you I'm a dancer, you think that I'm like sucking and fucking in the club, which is so not the case, and it's absolutely not. That's not even ever going to happen here in BC. It could never. But unfortunately, everybody kind of has their own idea of what that means if you're an exotic dancer. And then same with OnlyFans. Like there's girls who are also, in the fitness industry. They have an OnlyFans, and their OnlyFans is just them in their underwear, and they're making crazy money because they don't post photos of them in their underwear on their Instagram. Right. Whereas like I could never get away with that because I'm in my underwear in public and like all the stuff all the time. People want to see a little more on my Instagram. I mean, OnlyFans, yeah.
Well, and what I love about that too, so you walk into the gym. Well, actually, you got a couple. Yeah, let's start with that because you walk into the gym and then all of a sudden it's like, right? Everyone kind of. So like, how does that? Like that would suck. Like, how did you kind of? And how old were you at the time?
I was 19.
Younger.
Yeah.
So you're young, and so what did that kind of? How'd that feel?
I'll never forget that day ever. I was a small girl. I was like 98 pounds, and
oh my,
just
okay.
Very naive. And I was really, really bubbly when I was younger. And then after a lot of the bullying and stuff that I went through, I closed down, and now I'd say I'm bubbly again. But that was just crazy because like the managers at the gym knew, everybody knew. I remember even before I became a dancer, when I was just doing fitness competitions, you have to get those dancer heels.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
heels. That's right.
And I remember I had explicit permission from the owner of the gym that I was allowed to practice posing in the yoga studio room at the gym. And girls would like scream and freak out and yell at me from across the gym, this isn't a strip club. And they'd like scream at their boyfriends, like, don't you dare watch her practice her posing. And it's like, this is a standard thing. Like all bikini competitors do this.
Oh, that's really mean.
Yeah, it's
that's really.
Well, that's what's so
wow.
So that's the whole thing. Like back when I started in 2012, this was not acceptable work according to the public. Where now you could never get away with shaming somebody. Like, you can't escort shame, you can't OnlyFans shame, you can't slut shame. Like, everything's really changed now. People's opinions may have not changed, but the idea that you can just attack somebody for it is what's changed. So now, like, I meet girls who are, you know, Gen Z, they're dropping out of high school to become OnlyFans stars and stuff, and they have so much support. Like, everybody's like, oh my God, good for you. And that's just not the world that I came up in. And it feels really good now to have so much experience under my belt, but to have it now celebrated. So now I can talk about it, like, here I am with you. But for a long time.
Yeah, that's changed, right?
Yeah, that's changed. But for a long time, it wasn't like that. And it's always awkward. Like, I'll be anywhere and people will be like, oh, what do you do? And I just freeze. And I like, it's actually so awkward. I'll literally be out in public, like, chatting with somebody. Like, they could work there or wherever I am. And I'll just stare off into the distance like a weirdo. And I like, don't have an answer. And I look back at them and I'm like, I'm a content creator or I'm a business owner. Or I keep telling myself to say model because that gets like no questions after that. But if anything else you say, people have a lot of questions. So.
Yeah, man, that's pretty crazy that someone would be that, and people would be that outspoken to be like, you know, you suck. Like, really just to say it like, you suck, you're terrible. And to say that in like really hurtful ways, but like, it's pretty ballsy, you know? Like, wow, like you're an asshole to do that.
Yeah, I think what's changed too is like before you could bully somebody and it was like, shame on the victim, haha, they're a loser. But now it's very much changed where like if you're the person bullying, people are like, dude, what's wrong with you? Why are you so like angry? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's shifted too.
And so having that experience, did you ever, you know, just when you're on your own and you're by yourself and you just kind of have those moments to reflect? Because I've had these moments too where I'm just like, holy fuck, I think I'm making, like, I don't know if this is the right thing to be doing, you know, like you believe in whatever dream or dreams and especially things that might seem unattainable, like levels of success that you want to reach that in that present moment, you're not there, but you're working towards. And you have those moments, well, I've had those moments where it's like, man, you know, I don't know about this. But then you kind of give your head a shake and it's like, okay, you know, we're good. You just have those moments of weakness, right? But I never had someone or people really tell me to my face like, hey, you're a piece of shit for doing what you're doing. Or like, so I didn't really have that kind of negativity. I had skepticism, but that's a very different level to deal with. But for you, you're getting like attacked for that. And you're young also at the time.
Yeah.
How did you kind of, you know, what were those moments like for you where you're thinking, you know, damn, reflecting on what happened?
There was never a second where I thought what I was doing was wrong.
Yeah, on.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
When I was in university when I was 18 and I was doing my paralegal diploma at the University of the Fraser Valley, I wanted to be a stripper, but I was still 18 and I couldn't wait to be a stripper. And I told my classmates, like, I'm going to be a stripper once I'm 19. And I actually didn't know that you could strip at 18. I had no idea that there was that club in New West. And if I could go back in time, I would have started at 18. I would have flown to LA and started dancing there as soon as I could. But the thing is, back in the day, and things have changed a lot, and we'll talk about that, but the money in the strip clubs in Vancouver used to be off the charts, astronomical. I was 19 years old. I was making $4,000 every weekend. And I was also working weekdays. So I was making like 20 grand a month without even realizing it at 19. So like people had a lot of nasty things to say to me. I remember this one girl who I went to middle school and high school with, she like messaged me on Facebook. She's like, what the fuck are you doing? This is so stupid. Come work in Fort Mac like me. I'm a secretary. I make $1,400 a week up here, which back like
that's still pretty good.
10 years ago, that would have been okay money. Yeah. And I was like, oh, well, I'm making, more than $1,400 a night, but thank you. And so just at the time, it's like people, I think, and I've mentioned this in the podcast I did the other day, but like people, their instinct is to save and protect people. They actually think that their name calling and their skepticism, they think that they're keeping us safe.
Right.
So people wanted to keep me safe. Like they're worried I'm going to end up in drugs, or they think like, oh my God, she's ruining her life. She's going to be like chained up somewhere, like giving blowjobs. I don't know what people think, people just like their minds go.
I think it is a lot of that though.
It is.
I think it is.
And you watch TV And anytime a strip club is depicted in television, it is so not like any strip club I've ever been in. It's like the most thuggin', depraved situation. So it's just not like that. Like at least the clubs I've worked at are very glamorous, or it is a glamorized scenario. And so people think they're keeping me safe, but really I think like the most dangerous thing you can do is play it safe, right? And yeah.
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 And so, because you've also modeled and you were a Playboy cover model.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Thank you.
So now...
I was also in Hustler magazine.
And that as well.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that modeling career too, because you had an interesting journey, like we were talking off air as well. You had an interesting kind of back and forth and how that all worked out. So that's really interesting too. So when, maybe I'll jump ahead a little bit and then you fill in the blanks for me. So you're getting kind of attacked, I guess. Well, you're getting attacked for, oh, you're stripping and that's not acceptable. What are you doing? You're ruining your life, etc. Did posing for Playboy, which is, I mean, even people who don't really know what Playboy is know what Playboy is, right? Like the brand name is just so powerful in the social consciousness, right? So when that happened, when you got the gig, tell us a little bit just about that experience as well, because I've never met anyone who's modeled like that, so that's kind of cool.
Oh.
And did that, what's the right word? Legitimize you in other people's eyes? Validate? Yeah. What was the reaction?
Absolutely. I would say that it did. But before that, so in 2016 was when I first started getting invited to the Playboy Mansion. And so that was kind of like the first, I remember posting those photos on Facebook and everybody was like, whoa, oh my God, she's at the
Right?
Playboy
Yeah.
Mansion. And there was some people who messaged me, like online friends who were like, wow, like you told me that you wanted this and now you're there. And I think people started to realize like, I'm not just like, just talking shit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make things happen. Like this is a real industry. Like the modeling, swimsuit model, sex worker, whatever industry is a huge business. So yeah, I did. And my dad was so proud of me. He asked for 2 copies of my magazine. He like wanted my grandmother to see it. He showed every single person in my family and my extended family my Playboy magazines. My like half sister, she like was like, oh yeah, like dad won't stop going off about how you're in Playboy. Yeah. And so my parents were very proud. My mom even posted my Playboy cover on her Twitter. Yeah, it was kind of a big deal. And I did feel like it validated me. Like if you're in the sex worker industry or the hot girl industry or whatever you want to call it, being celebrated in that kind of format is a big deal.
And how did you get the gig? How'd that come about?
You know, I first, it's a weird long story, so I'll give you the full one. I was kind of being bullied by a girl who was a Playboy model way back in 2013. She was my boyfriend at the time's ex-girlfriend. And
Okay.
she was just like a vicious little cunt. And she was like, even though they were over, she would like come over to his place and like say she needed a place to sleep. And he would treat her kind of like she was like a first-class citizen because she was a Playboy model. And he would treat me like I'm a second-class citizen, even though I was the current girlfriend. So I was like horrendously tormented by this. It was just, it was such a short time span, but in my head, it was like the biggest deal at the time. And I just knew that I wanted to be a Playboy model too then, if that's how you get the good treatment from people. So I went on, I did an audition, like I online submitted. I didn't hear back because I guess I did my online submission incorrectly.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I didn't hear back. And then I forget what happened, but I was like, I'm just gonna try this again. So like a year and a half later, I did another online one. And then that's when they responded and they invited me to the mansion. And then I went to the mansion again, and like you do your test shoot and stuff, and nothing actually happened for a while. And then I did a photo shoot with a Playboy photographer who's like, every Playboy chapter, like in every country, they have like their official photographers.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
So I shot with somebody who did that, and Playboy South Africa saw the photos and asked for them. And that was kind of it. So it was kind of a long journey because I tried multiple times.
Yeah.
And I think being like going there and like meeting people and stuff helped.
Definitely.
And then I ended up finding out that girl's not even a playmate or a centerfold or anything. She's actually just a cyber girl of the week, which is nothing.
Oh, right. Okay.
So kind of crazy, the motivation, and then it wasn't even what I thought.
You had that Michael Jordan, that little edge where you're like, I took that personally. And you went on and got it done.
I'm not familiar with that, but sure, yeah.
There you go. It works. It works.
Yeah, I take things personally.
That's right. And so, now what year was that, 2012?
No, so I was published in 2018.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was actually a long journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sorry, when did you shoot for them?
In 2018.
Oh, so it was all in 2018 then.
Yeah.
Okay. And through that time, was Hustler before or after?
I shot for Hustler in 2020, just like a year before Larry Flynt died.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And what was your experience with that? Was that a fun time or?
Hustler is extremely professional.
Cool.
They're pornographers, which I would say, if you know the difference between Playboy and Hustler,
I do.
Spread eagles. So they handle you.
I mean, I don't know.
They handle you. Both companies are extremely professional. They handle you with care. When I was at Playboy Studios doing my original audition in person when they finally responded, it was very professional.
Yeah.
And anytime that you're doing nude work, there's a lot of legal stuff that's involved.
For sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, like what was that like for you at the time, doing something? Because Hustler is a little bit of a different kind of level than Playboy, but how was that? Because you also had your OnlyFans
in 2018.
At the time? It was in 2018. Okay,
Yeah.
So maybe just kind of work out the details for that for me then. So how was your experience with? Because now OnlyFans, that was sort of before
the boom.
Before the boom, because that was the COVID boom, and
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah,
Walk us through that.
I knew what OnlyFans was. Okay, so I will say, Hustler was actually a bigger dream for me than Playboy, because I would always dance for people at the club, show them my pussy, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, you need to be in Hustler," and I'm like, "I want to be in Hustler."
That's a good reaction, at least. You're like, "Oh, you should not do this." You're like,
"Do not show."
No, it's all right. Yeah.
No, I really wanted to be in a Hustler, and Hustler was an amazing experience. I would love to shoot for them again, and I plan to if I.
Oh, great. Okay, cool.
Whenever I get the time. So both were really great, and I think Hustler was a little bit more fast, and I got response from them quicker, so that there was a bit more of like a feeling of acceptance or something. I'm not sure. OnlyFans, I knew what that was because a lot of British models were onto it first.
That's right.
I'm sure you know that.
That's right.
And also because I was in the Playboy community, it was originally what I understand OnlyFans was meant to be was girls who were like Playboy models or glamour models who were getting hated on if they posted stuff on Facebook or Instagram. They needed a safe place to post their work. So only their fans would go see it instead of like, some
ass, some
bitch
troll
reporting your post over and over again. So that's how it started. And back in the day, people were charging a higher fee for their OnlyFans. It'd be like $20 a month and stuff. Yeah. And then once porn stars got into it, now it's like you see a lot of like $5 a month. So I started it. I didn't really keep up with it. I had it for a while and I enjoyed it, but I was comparing it to strip club money because I'm thinking like, okay, if I can make $800 a day and I'm only getting like $800 a month from subscriptions, it just felt like not worth keeping up with at the time.
Sure.
And I probably should have because when 2020 hit, the world got rocked. But yeah.
Okay. And then Hustler comes, you do that.
Yeah.
When did you restart your OnlyFans? Because then you shut it down and you're back at it now.
Yeah.
So how did that work more recently
when
then?
the club shut down, I was not sure that...
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah.
That would have happened too.
Yeah, the club shut down. I was out of work for like 15 months and then another 3 months.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah.
So that's significant.
It was significant. It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
So, and then for those who don't know, like, instead of making fun of Instagram models and stuff, people have to understand that social media is actually a huge asset because people who have followings, they were fine during that period. They were sliving, in the words of Paris Hilton. So anyway, oh my goodness, what was the question?
Talk about when you restarted your OnlyFans.
So I restarted it, and at first, it's so funny how things kind of cascade, but I was like, okay, well, I'll start an OnlyFans and I'll just dance on it like I'm in the strip club. So I do dance on my OnlyFans, like I do strip teases. And then, people ask to see more things and I wasn't really comfortable with doing certain things. And then, next thing you're comfortable and it happens pretty quickly. So, and a lot of people on my OnlyFans now are people who've been watching me on my Instagram for like a decade now since I first, started going by Nadia Fox and stuff.
And has Instagram been, how does that kind of work? Because like I'm getting into it now, where I'm like, okay, we got to start posting some fitness stuff and podcast stuff, and so I'm kind of starting to understand a little bit more about using Instagram as a tool. But I'm also a bit of a tool when it comes to that, so I'm kind of dumb. I'm trying to figure it out still. But in your instance, how has Instagram been for you? Has it helped? Has it hindered? Has it kind of not really done anything? Like, what's been your experience with social media for advancing your career?
Instagram is super important. It's important for people to know, like, and trust you. That's the most valuable thing. And so I find like people aren't going to find you on Instagram. It's actually really hard to get discovered on Instagram nowadays. Not always, but it can be. So Instagram's kind of like, people say it's their website or people say it's their business card. I feel like it's a place where people check in with you every day because everybody opens up Instagram every day and watches people's stories. So I think it's really important for people to like be able to peer into your life on a daily basis. And then also just like putting your best foot forward on Instagram. I think Instagram's the most glamorous app. Yeah. So I do think that's important. Of course, like any time that you're taking up space in people's mind, that matters.
Yeah, good point. And what I love about your Instagram too, I'm trying to even remember how it was after the record. You actually sent me a very lovely message after I broke the record.
Yes.
And I didn't know who you were.
Right.
But it was very nice. I still have the message because it was very sweet. I appreciated that. And then we just kind of started chit-chatting from there on. But what I really like about your Instagram is that it's very real. Like it does seem like insofar as a screen can be an accurate representation of a person, it's pretty accurate. Like from having spoken to you and talked to you, you're very open about. Well, first of all, you're very open about your work, which is great because I think that's important when people on the inside of whatever industry are saying, this is what it's like and this is what I go through and, I like it and blah, blah, blah. So I think that part's great. But you're really into self-development. You're very open about that. You're very good about talking about your sobriety. And I saw your one YouTube video from, I think it's a little while ago now, where you talked about your sobriety story, which is phenomenal. I'd like to get into that if you're okay with that. And your cold plunge stuff too is great. We can talk about that as well because I know a lot about that. But I think it's great that you're like, this is what I do. This is who I am. You like it. You don't. Fuck off. Like whatever. You're here for me or you're not. But yeah, I mean, if you're cool about talking about your sobriety a little bit, I'd love to ask you some questions about that.
Yeah, of course.
So just tell us a little bit kind of when that started and when you kind of realized like, all right, I got to get my shit together, because I think what people don't understand, and lately I've been getting a lot into super nerd moment for me, so let me just have my nerd moment, but like neuropsychology and different things like that. So I'm really trying to get an understanding of, people don't understand how difficult it is to actually get sober. Like it's pretty amazing, the behavioral changes, and depending on the substance that you're using, how it affects your brain chemistry. Like it's really not as simple as it is made out to be, and it takes tremendous willpower and introspection to be like, all right, we're going to make a change, we're going to keep it rolling. And I love that you're very good about documenting that, through your stories and posts and talking about it and being very open about it. But yeah, anyway, enough of me talking. So yes, so for you, what was your battle with that?
I knew I was becoming an alcoholic in 2015. So I had started to be going to Los Angeles like half the year.
Okay.
In 2015 and 2016 and 2017. And I think just living in a hotel room and being all alone, like you kind of just, go out and have a drink at the bar. And then within that year, I had to stop smoking marijuana because it started to have a negative effect, and I had been a stoner for a really long time. So I stopped smoking weed and I started to drink more to compensate. Like I wasn't consciously aware that I was compensating, but suddenly I was drinking a lot more.
Right.
And I knew it was a problem because I was 22 years old getting like 2-day hangovers.
Ooh. Yeah.
And a lot of people don't have that till they're in their 30s. And so Yeah, I knew it was bad, and then I also knew it was bad because I couldn't really go like a day or two without having a couple glasses of wine. And I know that sounds really tame, but like I literally couldn't handle going throughout the day without like sitting down and having, some wine. And that was kind of just like the very beginning of my alcoholism. And then fast forward to 2018, I almost died several times. I had it completely destroyed your electrolytes, and I was completely dehydrated and just dying. And I probably should have gone to the hospital, but I didn't. And that happened several times. There was one time where I was up all night drinking, and when I went to bed in the morning at 10 in the morning, my friend thought I was dead. And I've heard people say to me the amount that I can consume as far as alcohol actually scares them. It's
yeah, I don't mean to laugh, it's just kind of, you know what I mean.
It's sad though, and that's the whole thing. And even when I think about it now, because I'm 3.5 years sober now, I got sober May 19, 2019. When I now think about it, I know I can't drink, because in my head I'm I have this thing, and it's part of the cold plunging, it's part of Playboy, and it's part of everything I do. I like to do things to the max. And so when I think about drinking, it's we're going to do this to the max. Right. So I can never drink again. Yeah. So, but anyway, fast forward to 2018, after I had almost died a couple times, my nerve damage started to get really bad. Nerve damage is something alcoholics experience. Mm-hmm. And it got to the point where the last time I ever had a drink, I had 2 glasses of wine over dinner, and I didn't even, get drunk, obviously, but I couldn't sleep for 48 hours because I was convulsing and twitching and having all these involuntary spasms. Wow. Yeah, it was really bad. And so obviously, you're not even drunk and you're having a 48-hour bad reaction. It's time to quit.
And so I think for some people who would be listening, they might be thinking, okay, so the woman living the stripper lifestyle mm-hmm. is an alcoholic too. Mm. How much did that, and just based on listening to you talk about it, you're even saying just having kind of a few drinks or a couple drinks and you're yeah, this is, not good. So you recognized the behavioral aspect where you're the fact that I can't go a day without a couple drinks is mm-hmm. So you started to see the warning signs, which is generally a little bit atypical based on, some of the reading that I've done where it's usually these people are just going on benders and, oh, I'm fine. But it's good that you recognize okay, we got to kind of take a step back here. But how much did your lifestyle play into the alcoholism, or did it not, didn't at all?
I'll be really honest. I don't think it does at all, because if you go to an AA meeting, if I go to an AA meeting, I'm the only stripper in the room.
Right.
So
exactly.
What about the other 99? Yeah. So, I think that because there's a lack of structure, that can be hard for people. But a lot of people's lives that are super structured make them drink. Mm-hmm. So I don't really think there's a rhyme or reason or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, that's totally true, because in any profession, it's pro athletes too, and they got drug issues and drinking problems, and it's you're a pro athlete. They should be, because when you hear pro athlete, your immediate schema that you associate with that is jacked, good shape, pinnacle of health, right? And then to have a substance issue is just in complete opposition to that, right? Mm-hmm. And yet a lot of them struggle with that, mm-hmm. For a number of reasons, but that's the case. And yeah, if you're if I go to an AA meeting, I'm the only stripper there. Mm-hmm. But people will think, well, yeah, of course she's an alcoholic because, she's stripper and Onlyfans, and why wouldn't she be, right? And it's well,
I wouldn't think that, but I think maybe if those are the people that you're exposed to.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Those kinds of associations. I've talked to people, there's people who know drug dealers, and a lot of drug dealers, lawyers, are their biggest customers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and not just the normal drugs.
Oh yeah.
The hard ones.
Hard shit. Yep.
Yeah, so it doesn't really matter what your status or your title is. Addiction can affect anybody.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. And so what was your, what's the right word, process, or, how did you get sober? What were the steps that you took? Did you relapse? Was it kind of a thing where you're all right, I'm good, and once you got on the path, I was going to say it was a straight shot, but it's probably was things like that are peaks and valleys, of course, but, more or less a straight path. But tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, I had been attempting to get sober for months leading up to when I finally became sober. So there was struggles. I started off 2019 sober for, I think, 2 weeks. And then I had, after that I had a month or 5 weeks sober. And then I had a huge blowout or whatever you want to call it at somebody's home, which sucked. Anyway, I kind of got to the point where like I knew I was putting myself in serious danger, especially as a girl. Like if you're super hammered and you're just out in public, anything, God knows what's going to happen.
It's a very different situation.
Yeah, it is a little different. So, I knew I had to stop or else it was going to get really bad. And it was already bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And did you kind of take it upon yourself? Like, were you reading, like, all right, how to? Like, what was that process like? Because I just find that very interesting. Because again, the willpower and the discipline that you have to maintain that, I think it's overlooked by people. But it's a challenging thing because you're talking about from when you were fairly young, your lifestyle was a certain way. So you have to break a pattern of behavior that's entrenched in you for years. And humans are not designed to break comfort zones. We get in a comfort zone, whether the comfort zone is good or bad, but once you're in that zone of comfort, it's pretty difficult to shake that out. So I'm a little bit curious about how you just went about that process. Were you going to meetings? Like, what was the...
No, I actually didn't go to meetings. I found meetings were not helpful for my sobriety because, like a lot of alcoholics, you instantly are comparing yourself to people in the room, and you're like, "Well, I'm not like this loser,"
right?
Or
Yeah.
whatever. Or you just feel like it's not not everybody feels comfortable at AA meetings.
Right.
I don't feel uncomfortable there. I go to them once in a while just out of sheer joy for being in the community. But I kind of locked myself down. I didn't work much. I was eating whatever I wanted to eat that would make me happy and kind of getting like my dopamine hits from just innocent things until I felt strong enough to kind of resume normal life. I kind of describe it as being a baby with like a soft spot on its head because a lot of things will trigger you. I had to I guess my process was I quickly found out what my triggers were. I realized that I wasn't where I wanted to be in life, and so I really would drink whenever I was feeling like the pain of that. I would go to like really nice bars and lounges and I'd have like a $200 bill, and I guess I'd wanted to be in an atmosphere that made me feel like I was where I wanted to be in life. And also, even being happy could be like a so-called trigger because, you're feeling so good, let's go have some drinks.
Right,
and, and then you're not feeling so good. And I realized whatever it was that was on my mind, I kind of would ask myself like, well, after I have, X amount of drinks, what is the situation going to be different or better? Like, what is it going to fix the problem? No, it's not going to fix the problem. So I was able to somehow find a way to pause myself in the moment and ask myself those questions. I learned a lot of things were triggering me at the time, and now I'm so happy I'm in a much different place. But even just seeing somebody else doing well, or, this girl has a boyfriend, or this girl's getting engaged, or, this girl's in this country right now on vacation, like it's hard because we're always comparing ourselves with social media. And so I just, and that's part of why I shut down my Instagram, which we were talking about earlier. So I had to do whatever I had to do to just make sure the soft spot on my head went away. And then finally things started to become normal again.
And did you find that, was it easier to work? Like, you must have noticed that in other areas of your life.
I actually never drank at work.
Funny. Okay. Because you'd think that would be like an environment that's pretty well suited for that.
Yeah, even from like right out the gate at 19 years old. Actually, when I started dancing, I didn't drink alcohol.
Okay.
Yeah, alcoholism was kind of a problem with me even as a younger teenager. I actually wasn't allowed in my prom because I was really shit-faced. And that was something that I'll, obviously never forget.
Right.
And so I was sober right after high school for 18 months, and then I slowly started having cocktails as an adult. But I realized in the strip club, when you sit down and have drinks with people, it doesn't always mean that you're going to get paid
right.
or like more money out of those people or anything. I kind of like to go. My style in the strip club is hit and run, as I like to call it. And so I never really wanted to sit around and drink with people. Like I'd like to drink. The strip club wasn't the environment I wanted to drink in. I like to be in like really nice, like 5-star hotels and stuff when I drank. So for whatever reason, and also like I don't need to be drunk to get naked for people. It's something that I enjoyed doing and wanted to do even before, like even when I was 18, like I mentioned. So.
And so when did the cold plunging kind of come into effect? Was it related to the sobriety, or it was just kind of you discovered it?
It's so weird how it happened. It's totally new in my life. So I went like the last weekend of this July was my first time doing it.
Oh, that's it. Okay. Yeah. So you're a newbie. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
I've probably done it like 20 times. And I was going to the gym, like weightlifting and stuff and training a lot. And somebody at my gym goes, I don't think they're actually doing it anymore, but they were doing like 100 days in a row.
Nice.
And it was really cool. They posted on their story every morning. And I went through a horrible, horrible breakup earlier this year. And he invited me to go with him, and like I was just happy to be invited anywhere by anybody. And so I woke up, honestly I was, because like I didn't join, like I work out at home. I've been lifting weights for so many years. I wasn't at the gym to get fit. I was at the gym to make friends and meet people. And so I went out. I actually didn't really, I don't think I knew what I was getting myself into. That's what's so funny. Like
That's probably why you went. Yeah.
Like,
yeah, this is gonna suck.
No, like I woke up uncharacteristically early. I woke up at like 4:30 a.m. because they're all like personal trainers who I went with, and they all had like clients at 6 a.m. So like we're up early.
Right.
And basically we get up there, and then that's when I started to clue in, like, oh, the water's gonna be cold. And my friend who invited me looked at me and he was like, you just don't think. And then we got in the water. I was like up to my neck, and his friend
whoa, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's how I do it. And then his other friend, like one of the people who was with us, basically just told me how to breathe. And like the breathing changed everything. And so after that happened that weekend, I had a horrible, devastating breakup earlier this year, like 8 or 9 months ago. After that happened, the whole weekend I was crazy happy, and I didn't totally click why right away. I could see myself the way a stranger would see me. Like I could see myself as just this person who can do anything. Like, what's limiting you? It was like I saw myself without the lens of all these bad experiences and limiting beliefs. And I realized, oh my goodness, I had a nervous system reset. And I realized that every time I go cold plunging, it's like I'm microdosing that person. And if I do it enough, I'm going to become that person. So I started to do it every single week. And now I'm like practically a polar bear swimmer, because before I was just cold plunging, and now I'm swimming in the ocean in like November. So. Well,
I saw, when was it? It was like a couple weeks ago?
November 12th.
Yeah. You posted a video, and I can't remember where you were. It was one of the beaches here.
Yeah.
And I was like watching you go in. I'm like, oh, fuck. Just like, oh, it's so great, because you can just, you know, for people who've, because the nice thing is, at least at home, I got a pool, so the heat's off, you know, so it, you know, it's frigid, right? So you go in there and it's just like, oh, you know, you get that feeling. But I always have this really, I always have such a funny reaction to when I go in the cold water. You'll definitely be able to relate to it. But like when I'm scared, I am a bit of a screamer. So when I get scared, I'll scream. I'm totally fine with that. I'm a vocal person. But then I laugh because I think it's funny, because it's like, oh, okay, you got me. And then I laugh because I think it's funny, you know? Oh yeah, go for it.
I was going to say laughter is actually a sign of your vagus cord relaxing.
So you're going for the cold water. So I'll go in, and same deal, like I'll go to neck, and then when I finish, I'll go dunk the head to, you know, get a little extra boost, right? But once you get in, you get that initial, you get the gasp reflex kick in, and then, okay, it's like breathing time. So you do, you know, your intentional breathing, your breathing exercises that allow you to stay in the water for, you know, X amount of time. But then I'll just start laughing, because then I'm like, this is also kind of funny. I'm freezing my ass off, and the fact that I'm uncomfortable makes me laugh. But then the laughter actually kind of helps you tough it out. Like you can kind of stay in the water because you're just kind of laughing like a bit of a maniac. But it's a fun time. I mean, I do enjoy it. But then, and that's funny, like for you, where you that's a really interesting way of looking at it too, where you're microdosing. How'd you put it? You're microdosing that person who, like that, is just sort of free of
that limitless person.
Yeah.
Who's, you know, never been told that you can't do this, or you're not good enough for that. So yeah, and then the more I do it, I actually find like I do think I'm becoming that, because now my nervous system, like I can kind of go into that exact mode that I'm in when I cold plunge. I can do it on the spot now, which is, something I think people work really hard for that. Like they teach it in neuroscience, and what's his name? Dr. Joe Dispenza. He talks a lot about that. And I think cold plunging is definitely like the fastest track you can take to that. And yeah, I don't know what else to say.
No, that's great. And just kind of like even more recently, so I had a really nasty, horrible breakup about a little while. Mine was a little bit longer ago, but yeah, it was a fucked up situation. So high five on that one.
Yeah.
But, and so not like to get too detailed into it, but I'm interested, how have you been kind of dealing with that? Have you been feeling a bit better when it comes to stuff like that? I know it's the couch we get. It's the angles you're going to get for the camera and the mics, but, how's that been? Like, how have you kind of been, just as a person, how have you been kind of feeling about that?
I feel good right now.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just kind of feeling a little bit more comfortable and just kind of...
Anytime that I, miss being in a relationship or something, I just take a breath and I remind myself, like, I'm not alone, I'm free. Yeah, because I wasn't free when I was with that person. Right. I was, like, so happy to be in prison with that person. But now I realize, like, like you were saying, people can get comfortable with anything, kind of. And so you just have to be more, I'm just training myself to be comfortable being free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when it comes to, it's funny, because you're so I went to university with a girl who's like big shot Onlyfans star, like it's kind of, her name's Elle Brooke.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
British girl, but and I didn't even really know about it until after she left after first year, which is really funny. And I'm like, holy shit! I kind of saw her a couple times, but you don't pay attention or whatever, right? So it's really interesting so other than her, you're the only person that I'm aware of that I've had any contact with who is in that line of work, which is great. And the thing that I think I mentioned to you on a phone call once, but what I really appreciate about you is that you talk about it. You talk about your work in a very, this is work. It's professional, the way that you speak about it. You're clearly very intelligent, so it's not like, you're just kind of, ditzy about it, but like, you understand what you're doing. You're pretty tuned in. And just kind of getting used to that environment, moving forward. And actually, I think, too, as well, maybe we should talk about, for people who don't know OnlyFans, the scale at which you can make money on it. I think people either think you don't make a lot of money or you make, the crazy, $50,000 a month.
Oh, there's people making $300,000 a month.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And so for you, professionally speaking, maybe just, I guess, focusing on the OnlyFans work, and I guess your modeling work too, because you mentioned, wanting to do some of that. How do you scale that? How do you grow your following so that you end up making, the money that you want to be making?
I find YouTube is a huge asset. I think that's the best place because it's kind of this nexus where everybody's on there. I think YouTube, I guess I don't know what other people's lives are like, but for a lot of people, YouTube is kind of their guilty pleasure time.
Right.
Like a lot of people wake up in the morning and with their coffee, they watch a YouTube video. And people watch YouTube, fall asleep. I fall asleep listening to some of my favorite YouTubers' voices if I can't go to bed. So YouTube's kind of the best place, and I find that it doesn't limit you or restrict you the way Facebook and Instagram like to, and Twitter. So I catch people on YouTube.
Right.
Yeah.
And you just had your page monetized too.
Yes.
Like a couple days ago, or you?
Yesterday.
There you go.
Yeah.
Which is great. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That's excellent. And so, just moving forward, because we're kind of wrapping up. We got a few minutes, so no rush. But what are kind of your plans for the next little while, professionally speaking? Just kind of, and tell us a little bit about your YouTube, because I don't think we've mentioned it yet, other than just briefly.
Yeah, my YouTube channel is called In Bed with Nadia, and I like to have intimate talks from the safety of my bedroom. And I also do lingerie try-ons, which people really like. YouTube, I wanted to be able to bring some value to people by talking about things that people maybe don't normally hear somebody talk about. And I'm pretty honest and open, especially about like health stuff. I actually beat psoriasis this year, which is a huge deal.
How'd you do that?
Just by like diet, like changing the things I eat and stuff, super low histamine diet. So I just kind of am an open book on my YouTube channel. And there's also some sexiness and some of my physical pursuits on there too. You wanted to know like what's next for me or what I'm working on? Right now, I want to do a lot more photography, or modeling, I should say. So that's really important to me. I kind of feel like it's art for me, and creating art's important to me. And I'm starting to collect my thoughts and notes because I do want to maybe write a book. Yeah, not about me. Like I want to write a book probably about relationships with ourselves and God and stuff.
And you're very religious as well.
I don't know if religious. Yeah, I am. Yeah, I don't know if that's the.
I know it's always
a tough word,
right? Yeah.
Because I don't go to church. But yeah, I have a really strong faith. Yeah.
Now, we got enough time to kind of get into it. So I went to Catholic school, and I was an altar server and all that shit too. So I really liked it at the time. It was fun, and kind of as I got a bit older, I'm just kind of like, going to church, like whatever. It never was really, and I guess I consider myself religious, I guess, spiritual, sure, but it's just kind of like, I remember the lessons, from Catholic school. Don't be an asshole, essentially, be nice, treat people well, treat yourself well, just live a good life, be a good person, spread as much joy and whatnot as you can, make other people better, right, and yourself. And now when people hear what you do for a living and the fact that you're spiritual, religious, those kind of seem to clash, just by hearing it at that level. But what's your relationship like with that? And from the background that I've, from talking to you and whatnot, that also helped with your sobriety as well?
Yeah, it did. It was a huge contributing factor because obviously the Bible talks about in the end days, not being drunk, or it also talks about when you are drunk that the Holy Spirit's not inside you.
Does it actually? Oh, I got to refresh my reading.
Actually, there's a lot of science behind that because there's very limited studies on blood and what blood's actually doing. But from what I've read, blood is actually what holds your soul in your body. So when your blood alcohol content changes, that's when your soul starts to slip out and blackout comes. So, I wanted, for spiritual reasons, I wanted to be sober all the time and conscious all the time. I didn't like who I would be when I drank because sometimes I'd be mischievous or naughty or rude and stuff, just bratty. And I'm not like that when I'm sober. So I didn't want to be that naughty person. And when I say naughty, I mean like mischievous and like deviant.
Yeah.
So, that played a role. Nobody really says anything to me about my faith. The only person who denounces my faith is my mom. She's very, she doesn't believe in Jesus. She doesn't believe in God. She's not Christian. She's not of faith. And it really bothers her and triggers her and makes her angry that I say I'm a Christian. And I think that that's, like you're kind of touching on, it bothers people because they have this very non-sexual view of Christians.
Right.
And but that's so not true. Like all Christians love sex, all humans do, and God created it. So it's obviously a big part of us. None of us would be here without it. I think it's just about having sex in the right context, handling it responsibly. And handling people's hearts responsibly, I think, is a big main thing. And I think what people don't understand about Christianity is it's so much about your heart posture. Because if you're just following a set of rules and laws like Muslims or Catholics do, but your heart's not in it, then nothing's actually transforming inside you. So it's kind of more about having a heart transformation, which then governs your obedience to God. It's not obedience first. It's usually like something has to shift, and then out of faith, you're obedient.
Heart posture.
Yeah.
Never heard that before. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's these two YouTubers, Tori and Chad Masters. They use that term, and I really love them.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, and I know for me, because I went to public high school, but the Catholic elementary school, so I, pretty familiar with all that stuff. And then what was interesting was it's funny being so it's not that personal, but it's interesting. Like the first kind of couple girlfriends that I had, when you're like late teens and into your early 20s, like when you're sleeping together, I had a lot of that Catholic guilt shit on me where I'm like, oh, this is wrong, this is bad, and it's like, and then after a while, I just got to the point where I'm like, but like we love each other, like what the fuck, like it's not a big deal, like we're not doing anything terrible, but I don't know, maybe if I get judged for that, I'm like, I'll stand by those decisions, it was okay, but it's funny how certain elements of a faith can kind of stick to you in different ways, and sometimes it hinders, and then other times it can, prop you up as well, so it's always that interesting little dance you got to do and figuring out internally, like, okay, this is where I'm at and this is how I feel about it and et cetera. But it sounds like you have a pretty good, you sound pretty self-aware when it comes to that stuff, at least, and was that like a bit of a road for you to kind of figure that out, or did it sort of come a little bit more naturally?
It was really natural, and from a really, really young age, people sexualized me, for better or for worse. Like, people imposed that onto me from a really young age, and I was very naive in middle school and stuff, and guys would say super crazy things to me. I remember being so young, and people were like, telling me like, you're gonna end up in porn, or
that's nice.
I mean, I am though. Right.
But I'm sure they weren't saying it to be nice about it. They're saying it like,
Right. But I was like so young. I was like literally like 14, 15. And I'm just like, if you look at 14, 15-year-old girls, to say that to them, that's like outrageous. Mm-hmm. So from a really young age, that was being imposed upon me, and older men were interested in me and stuff. And so I, even without doing anything as a virgin, people were already putting so much sexual fantasy onto me. And I realized, like, even as like a virgin, if people are acting this way, it's really like, how do I say this? Like I'm not doing anything. Mm-hmm. I'm just sensual. Mm-hmm. And people kind of take that and like,
it's not my fault I'm hot, asshole.
People kind of turn it into what they want to turn it into. Like, people see what they want to see.
Yeah.
And then with my career, it's complicated. There's a whole ethical or moral debate, but there's like lots of single mothers who are dancers. There's a lot of people, like, I know a girl who just became a dancer because she has this outrageous vet bill, and her pet needs her.
Right.
Yeah. And so things happen, and with my faith and with what I do for work, it's not, even if I'm covered in sweats on the street, like picking up a coffee, like I've had men be like, ugh, when I walk by them on the sidewalk.
You just fucking elbow them in the face on the way by, you prick.
This happens to a lot of girls. Like, girls are not joking when they say it's scary.
No, I believe you. Yeah.
And so, like, if you're covered in baggy sweats and that's still the reaction, like, I mean, being a stripper is not the problem. Mm-hmm. And having sex with somebody you care about is not the problem. People are just really hypersexualized, or people maybe don't know how to control that themselves, but like, that's their responsibility to figure out for them if they want to.
It always amazes me. It's hard to believe that, like, obviously, like the two of us sitting here, we're both humans in general, right? We got that going, but it's interesting, like, I guess I'm a man. But, I'm a guy, we'll go with that, and a woman, and the experiences that, like, you go through versus the experience that I've gone through in just that one category, it's just, like, it's not even night and day. It's that much different. Like, it always amazes me, like, how much shit women have to deal with, like, how you're saying. Like, where for me, that would just never, it doesn't even cross my mind, because it just is not something that happens. So it's amazing the discrepancy in experience, and yet we're both the same thing,
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And and pretty unfair too, I would add,
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, I don't really think there's like a separation between like your sexuality and then your faith. Like, I feel like you don't need to have one and then not have the other. That seems really outrageous. But I do think that there's an issue with promiscuity and stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I think we actually timed that out pretty well. It goes by quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love doing these. It's so much fun. Mm-hmm. So tell us where people can find you. I think you mentioned the YouTube already, but mention, I guess, Instagram, YouTube, Onlyfans.
Yeah. So
Anything else? Yeah.
My handle is at Nadia Fox 777 for OnlyFans, Twitter, Instagram, and even YouTube. You can find me. YouTube introduced handles recently, so if you do Nadia Fox 777, it'll show up on YouTube too. And yeah, that's where you can find me. And thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. It was great to meet you in person. I know it was a lot of fun.